Okay, guys. So let me review real quick for the quiz tomorrow. Quiz tomorrow is only 15 questions, so it shouldn't be that difficult. First thing we gotta remember is that exponent means repeated multiplication. The big number, which we call the base, that's the one that I'm going to repeat. The exponent tells me how many times. So I'm gonna repeat 4 times. So write 4 times 4 times 4 times 4, and then that's basically it. Or then I'll be telling you guys to use calculators. Obviously not from your phones. To do the worksheets, fine. Fine to use your phones. But for the quiz, no phones. And then depending on the calculator, some of you guys might have a key that looks like, sometimes they use x to the y, sometimes depending on the maker, they use y to the x. So depending on the maker. Sometimes it looks like, if you look at your key, some calculators have x to the y or y to the x. And that is for you guys to type in your exponents easier. Instead of going 4 times 4 times 4 times 4, you guys just write 4, press the key, and then the exponent. And then it does it. Right? So like 4 to the 20th, for example, would be way easy with that key. Right? 4 typing it 20 times would be annoying, but with that key would be way, way easier. So depending on your calculator, mainly if it's a scientific calculator, we'll have it. If it's not scientific, then no. And then for those of you that use your phone for your worksheets, you guys know if you tilt your phone, it becomes a scientific. So, like I said, look for the key. It helps you a little, at least for the homework. But 4 to the 4th, right? 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 is 256. I know for the worksheet, sometimes I go with big exponents. Yesterday, you guys had like some calculators were not able to work them all the way out. So it gave you like something weird, like 1.38 e to the 12, something like that. There were a couple of questions that were like that. Fine, like on the worksheet is fine. On the quiz, I'll try to keep it low. But for the worksheet, we can do it. It's work, it's practice, so you can do that. Let's take a look at question number 2. When we have parentheses, I have to multiply my exponents. So I'm going to call this 8 to the negative 6. Because I multiply my exponents. 8 to the negative 6. For this one, let me use a calculator. I know 8 to the 6. 8 to the 6 is 262,144. So 262,144. That's what 8 to the 6 is. But now, because of the negative sign, the negative exponent, what that means is make this a fraction and put a 1 on the top. Right? It doesn't mean make the answer negative. It means make it a fraction. I would have made it negative probably if my negative sign was on the front. Right? Some answers could be negative, but not the negative exponent doesn't mean make it negative. Negative exponent means make it a fraction. Let me take a look at something like question number 11. Here I have negative 4 to the 8th. Whenever we have multiplication of various numbers, we have our exponents, we add the exponents. That's why I have negative 4 to the 8th. Then I'm going to go negative 4 multiplied by itself 8 times. In my case, I'm just going to use my calculator. And I get 65,536. And this one is not a fraction, even though I see a negative, because a negative is not the exponent. Right? If the exponent was a negative, then it would have been. But then negative 4 8 times became positive. because it was negative times a negative, became positive, and so on and so forth. Just real quick on number 12, I'm going to call this 6 to the 4th. Once again, I added the exponents. That's why I have 6 to the 4th. And then type in your calculator and figure what that is. Right? I'll just leave it at 6 to the 4th. I think you guys get it. Okay. Alright, so the first rule we saw was multiplication. You guys notice I have multiplication in between my numbers. But I said multiplication, to make it easier, just add the exponents. Now let me move into division. Clear this out. Take a look at something like 21. I'm going to have 3. So that's the big big base. That's the big number. And I have to subtract my number. Right? From division, I subtract my exponents. I'm thinking negative 3 minus a negative 1 is negative 2. The top exponent minus the bottom exponent. If we need to write it down, negative 3 minus a negative 1, I know two negative signs put together is plus, so that is negative 2. I know 3 to the 2 is 9, but 3 to the negative 2 is 1 over 9. Looking at 22, let me simplify this as 2 to the negative 3. Right, because I went, this is a 1. 1 minus 4 is negative 3. And I'm going to call this 1/8. Right, it's a fraction because it was a negative exponent. So we saw multiplication, we added the exponents. We're looking at in division, I subtract the exponents. And I think at the very beginning I covered those with parentheses. We multiply the exponents. And then 1 rule 2, 0 exponent. Don't forget that anything to the 0 is 1. Let me take a look up, let me find one of those. More likely up here. Take a look at number 9. I know parentheses, I multiply my exponents. So I'm going to have 7 to the 0. Because I multiply my exponents. But then I said anything to the 0, it's always 1. So my answer for number 9 is 1. And then another 0 could be in a division. As an example, let's say I had 3 to the second divided by 3 to the second, I get 3 to the 0. Right, because top one minus the bottom one, 2 minus 2, right? 2 minus 2 gives me 0, so 3 to the 0 will give me 1. Like that, even in division, you guys can run it to 0 exponent. Like I said, I would simplify that to 1. Anything to the 0 is always 1. Right. Any questions? Okay. 16. Let's take a look at number 16. I know this negative 5 is to the 1, so in fact I'm going to put it inside parentheses so that way they match. And I'm going to call this negative 5 to the 1. Remember, in multiplication, I added my exponent. Negative 5 to the 1 is just negative 5. Right? Negative 5 once. That's what I mean.